welcome back. And we're moving into our second conversation for today as we find out more about the bird banding project. What is it? Well, we have two representatives here from the University of Belize. We have Dr. Elma Kay, who is the science director, and we have Abidas Ash, who is an avian biologist. Good morning and welcome.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Thank you for having us.
Now, of course, you're both a part of the Environmental Research Institute at the University of Belize. And so I want to start off there by understanding the role of the ERI at the university.
Okay.
Dr. Kay?
Yes, thank you, Marlene. So yeah, we started in 2009. The university approved that we could initiate this new department, which is called the Environmental Research Institute. Our mission is really to build national capacity for science, and with a purpose. And that purpose is for the wise management and use and conservation of Belize's natural resources. We saw that Belize's advantage is really in this whole area of, that's one of the things that we have our claim to fame, right?
Yeah.
All of our nature-based industries, all the things that we do that rely on nature and natural resources. And so we wanted to focus the mission of the Institute for that. Belize has always, we've had a rich history of a lot of people, scientists and other people from abroad coming here to do research, and that is very important. We will always need the partners to fill in the gaps. Our country is very small. We'll never be able to have all the areas of expertise, so we'll always be working in conjunction with people, but it's so important. Like, ownership starts at home, and so we need to have people here that have that capacity to do research and inform some of the things that we want to do.
9 years after its inception, talk to us about some of the substantial research that has come out of the Institute.
A big part of our programs has been our marine program at TERNEF. You guys might know that the University of Belize actually has the Calabash Key Field Station at TERNEF Atoll. And we have had a long-term monitoring program there looking at ecosystems, corals, seagrasses, mangroves. That information is actually going directly to our partners at the TERNEF Atoll Sustainability Association, who are the managers of the TERNEF Atoll Marine Reserve. And so that information goes to them in terms of designing what types of management interventions they want to do, or what type of management. So that's one of the big things we do in the marine world. Yeah. In the terrestrial world, we've had a long-standing partnership with our partners at Panthera in terms of the jaguar research. Yeah. And the big things there is, again, we've had the longest running jaguar study in the Americas in terms of looking at populations of jaguars and how jaguars are doing. And the Coxcomb is definitely, the Maya Mountains is the big stronghold for Belize. Yeah. We have jaguars everywhere. And we've also worked in the Central Belize Corridor, which I think is something that we have talked about in this show before. Yeah. And so again, using the data on wildlife and mammals and jaguars, we've been able to define that corridor. We know it's an important area. It's very imperiled at the moment because there's a lot of large-scale development there. And so that's one of the areas where we're also trying to find a solution for a win-win, that balance between people, but also not maintaining our environment intact and making sure that we can still derive for either for our economy or for our health or everything that we depend on.
So how do we then transition to bird study and research?
Yes. Oh, wow. Yes. Well, birds are a really important part, I think, of Belize because of our nature-based tourism product. I'm sure that you guys have heard that there's going to be a big birding festival coming up that BTIA is promoting. Belize Audubon has been working a lot with IDB and other partners to professionalize bird tour guiding around the country. There's been a move, there's a new platform that's global where you can enter all the birds that you see, and it's a big, what we call citizen science effort, where you, me, anybody can enter what they see at any given location, and it's this huge amount of data that can tell us stuff about birds and their distribution. So globally, I think it's just a big move in terms of birds and what we know about birds. For us, though, they're obviously very important for our economy. The reason BTIA and all these other organizations want to promote it is because there's a niche market there that we have. I think only about 10% of our visitors come to do bird guiding activities or birding activities, and so we want to increase that market share because it's been one of the biggest or fastest growing markets, especially in the US, for tourism. And so to be able to do that and keep that, we have to understand what birds are doing. Where are they? Which birds are coming? What birds can you see when you come here? What are the population trends? You know, are they increasing, decreasing? As we do development or we manage our protected areas, you know, are we safeguarding those birds? So that's where it started for us, you know, in terms of an interest.
You know, we recently had the conversation about the birding festival, and I have been very fascinated by it because not only do you talk about this, it's a relatively small percentage of people who come exclusively for birding, but they stay so much longer than your average visitor. And it seems to be perhaps something that had been quietly growing, and now there's more of a focus on it. And so my interest, you know, is looking at Abidas and finding out, you know, you're an avian biologist. Just what made you venture into this area of study in the first place? We've been neglecting the birds, and you've been focusing on them the whole time.
So when I was doing my undergraduate degree, I was volunteering at ERI, but I was mostly doing marine stuff.
Okay.
And I never knew because I really didn't want to do anything with plants because it's like a lot of different, there's a whole diversity of plants, and I don't think I can remember all of those. So I didn't want to do that, and I was trying to see what was there for me in the marine sector. And one of my professors told me about an internship that they had with a collaboration with Be Free. So that's a field station down in the south, the University of North Carolina, Wilmington, and the University of Belize. So they were looking at engaging two University of Belize students and some locals to go into this bird banding technique that they want to showcase and want us to understand what are the outcomes and what we can learn from it. So I was curious about it, and I was like, okay, I'll take the chance and see what it is all about. And we had to travel to Be Free for 5 days every month, just for them to teach us all how to handle the birds safely, what we collect, what we do with them, and all of those things. So that is what perked my interest, and I'm just like, this is pretty interesting. It's easy to do once you get a hand of it and everything. Yeah. So I finished my undergrad, and then another professor told me of an internship that they were offering as well at one of the field stations that just recently opened, which is Trees on the Hummingbird Highway. So I went there and I worked for them in their bird program as well for almost 2 years. And then Dr. K met with them, and she's like, well, we want to start a bird program at ERI because we want to start learning about these birds here. Then they were like, okay, well, Abidas is at this point where she can actually handle a station on her own and stuff like that. Oh. So I was like, then applied for the job at ERI, and that's how I became the avian biologist at the University of Belize Environmental Research Institute.
Okay, so let's step back though. What is bird banding?
So bird banding, so basically it's they've over years, different names, so people know it differently. It's ringing, bird ringing, so it's basically putting a metal band or a color band.
But ring.
Yes, ring, like a ring. Putting a ring on your feet, and so it's either a aluminum band or a metal band, and or even color band, so like a plastic, like depending on the different research objectives that you want to do. But we use the aluminum and metal bands for our birds, and on the band it has numbers on it, some general information of usually it's the company of where we got the bands or our own information about it. Mm-hmm. So you catch these birds, so there's a capturing techniques. So basically we use mist nets. There's many different ways of how you can catch them. You can use them like cages and stuff, but the best use for us is mist nets. So it's these long mist nets, fine mesh nets. They come in various sizes for different sizes of birds as well. We use a 32 to 34 millimeters, so they're very small little boxes of mesh around. And we have 5 different layers, and in those layers you have pockets. So when you set them up, the birds don't really see them. And
So
then
they crash into
they
the
go
net?
into it. Yes, but the net is flexible, so it's
Okay.
not gonna.
You're not hurting them.
You're not hurting them or
Okay.
anything, and they fall into the pocket. And then when they're trying to get out, that's when they become tangled in the net. So basically, their wing just grab onto the net with
Yeah.
their feet. So that's when you go. So we usually check the nets every half an hour. So we do that because we don't want to keep them too long in there.
Yeah.
We don't want the conditions to change for them. So
Yeah.
we go and then we safely extract them and then bring them back to the station.
And put the ring.
Yes.
And maybe to clarify, with the ring and the number, I think in this show we have spoken about how you identify individual jaguars,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So this is Bob, this is
Yeah.
Fred, this
Yeah.
is John, right? And we know the jaguars by their individual spot patterns, right? Their
Yeah.
rosettes that they have, because they have a very distinct pattern. So with birds, because we cannot tell individuals, then we put that little ring
Yeah.
on their leg with that number. That's their unique identifier.
Okay.
So if we catch them back again, we know this is Jane.
Yeah. And she's
we-
already in our system. We
That's
know her
right.
behavior.
And we caught her, 5, 6 years ago, and she was using the same habitat. So think about the richness of information that you can get
Yeah.
in terms of how birds may be using, say, a particular site. One of our banding stations is at Black Rock Lodge, and they're one of our partners. And they were very interested because, of course, birding is a big part of their product that they sell as a birding lodge, as a resort. And then they have the Eligio Panty National Park next to them. So they wanted to know, how are we serving as good bird habitat? So this was one of the reasons they partner with us on this.
So
Now,
this
is it like turtle tracking? Because I know you track the jaguars, you track turtles, not you, but environmentalists. Is it like tracking similar?
No, for birds, there actually are like what they call, putting little trackers that you can use, like a type of transmitter that has like a satellite tag.
Yeah.
So we don't have that. So we are not able to tell you it's flying this exact route and passing through Cuban and
Okay.
up. We can't tell you that, but we can tell you that it's the same bird. So if that bird is captured or caught in a net, for example, in the U.S., and then it's caught here, that is in a database, in the databases that are kept for bird banding, because we're connected. We get our bands through partners in the U.S. as well, so that all the information also goes to their databases, and so we know this bird was, somewhere in the Midwest, and now it is here in Belize.
Yeah.
But we cannot tell you the exact. That's a different technique. So we're not.
So right now
we're
we're
not
just
doing-
finding out where they're caught, and you can be able to kind of know where they're passing at least.
Yes.
Oh, what about this particular time of year where the birds start to migrate? Are you catching birds from that have been banded in other parts of the world?
So the protocol that we use for our banding is we band from November to March.
Okay.
So we're looking at how these birds are doing in their wintering grounds, basically. And so far we haven't caught any bird that was banded somewhere else. Well, actually we did, sorry, but it was not far from here. It was at Rockville. So
Okay.
there was a researcher doing research there, and he banded a bird that was heading out of Belize. So when it came back, we caught it at Coxcomb. So that's when, and the bird, we start noticing that it's year after year that this bird comes to Coxcomb. So basically he caught the bird on his way out,
Yeah.
but the bird was already coming from Coxcomb. So the following year when he came back, he came right back to Coxcomb, and he comes over and over to Coxcomb. So those are little things that we usually catch. So we would catch birds that we've banded, but from other stations. So we've caught one that we banded at Black Rock, and we caught it at Coxcomb. there was one that was banded at Coxcomb by someone else that was doing a research there, and it was caught at Black Rock. So those are the little, so we can see that they're moving around and that they're using the different forest types and habitat that's there.
My interest is in finding out how does this particular research translate into, for instance, the tourism sector, where you have persons who are training or studying to become guides to be able to show tourists or visitors to the country certain species of bird, their habitat, and that sort of stuff. How do you take this information and pass it along to the average person who would want to learn about birding and what have you?
Yeah. So I think there's two components in terms of, how we link back to what you're asking. And there's the direct kind of research results and how we apply them. And then there's the outreach aspect of it. Because one of the reasons we got into this is not just to get the scientific findings, which take time. We cannot right now. For example, it's just been our longest running station has been at Black Rock, and I think we started in 2016 with them.
Oh.
So that's 2 years.
Yeah.
But to really have in science, you have to have a meaningful data set that you can analyze. So we know that that's a 5-year period. So we won't be able to tell them a lot about their populations yet and the survival of those birds until about 5 seasons into it. So that's going to take some time. But the outreach component of it is yes, how do we engage people that may not be scientists? And so one of the ways that we've been doing that is, for example, at Black Rock, 2 of the people that work with Abidas are actually their tour guides. And so they are getting so good that they're at the point where they're processing birds and being able to take data from these birds, not just the skills of getting them out of the net and all of that, but actually looking at the bird and all its features. Think about these guys when they go out in the field with tourists, how much more they can tell, because now they're into the ecology, they're into the, and if you know
now you can definitively say X species passes here every December.
Absolutely, you can tell them about the habitat use, but you can also tell them more about, because the whole handling of the bird and all of that engages them into knowing more about the bird, not just its features and how it looks, but its natural history, what it eats, what it does, where it goes. And so that is, if you think about it, that's a very, that's a rich amount of information that you can transmit, and your product becomes a higher quality product that you're delivering. So that's one of the ways. We also try to involve students in the effort, because we want more young people to get interested in it. And we do actually, at the moment, we would like to get more support for the program, because we want to involve, we were talking outside while we were waiting here to somebody that works here, and I think works with the Girl Guides and the Scouts. And so she was saying, can we set up something with you guys so that the children can come and see? And I think, yes, that knowledge translates to what we have to offer as a country, a quality product, So think about it as all that information that is being transmitted, that love, and that will show when you go and talk to your tourist or try to sell that.
How much does it help us to understand, or perhaps maybe you already knew, but the species that we have, the birds that are passing through, how much of it is new information?
I'll let Abidas also talk from her experience with the project and the actual gathering data, but I think there's a lot of things we do not know. I think we have a good handle of what species are here. So like, will a new bird pop out? That's not gonna happen. We have recorded 585 species of birds right now for Belize. If you go on the eBird platform, you'll see where people are recording them. So new species that might pop up, not gonna happen very often. It's not out of the question.
And if it does, it would be an indication for climate change
That's
issues.
correct. That's correct. So those are the kinds of things that would trigger that. Like something that had not been here before, and now we're seeing. But it's gonna be a more rare occurrence. But I think what we don't know a lot is things like this: survival. which is why the banding stuff is important. Habitat use, site fidelity, are they coming back to the same place over and over? You know, who's staying here and who's moving on? Abidas, I don't know if you want to add anything about the new information.
In terms of new information, so there's a lot of different, it might not be every year that you see, but some years you would, because of the whole, you know, climate change and stuff like that, or even storms, like, you know, storms that are passing through, they just push them towards where there's land, and then we get them, and then so those are little things that we would actually see. For example, last year we had one species that was passing through, and it was a really late time for it to be passing through, so we end up catching it in the net. But as Dr. K said, it's rare. It's not something that you'll every time be getting one of these birds here, but no. So most of the time what we usually catch is the same species that we know that are going to be here in Belize, which they've already had they've already identified these birds for a guide.
Almost 600 species in Belize.
Yes.
What is that species? Because I'm just too fascinated here.
So that's a royal flycatcher.
Yeah, that's an
Wow.
So this is one of the birds that live in Belize. So you find them
Is that
here
to the
in
top of the head?
Yes. So it's
Okay.
a crest that they have. So it's usually used for mating and for scaring you, basically, saying that, oh, I'm dangerous.
Yes.
So that's the female that earlier, and this is the male here. So you can see the coloration in the crest is different. Earlier was yellow, and this is now like reddish orange color.
Yeah, so that's part of their
So this is a
display.
migrant species as well. So these guys are the ones coming from North America. A migrant as well.
That's pretty.
Yeah.
What's that?
That's a migrant. That's an American redstart.
Looks like a Halloween bird. But you know, and when I said that you've recorded almost 600 species of birds, you know, it really does. I mean, it helps for the tourism sector to use that as a part of their promotional material. But I like what you're talking about in being able to recognize changes in environments and climates, and you know, if there's a storm or if perhaps the original winter habitat is now developed, they have to find somewhere new. Have you been seeing any particular patterns of changes the few years that you've been recording this data?
Yeah, I would say right now we don't have enough to be able to definitively say anything. More what has been interesting for us is how the role of connected forests, because that's kind of where we are.
Okay.
You know, how we're catching things at one forested station and they're moving to another very forested station.
Yeah.
I mean, clearly, you know, the habitat available to them is going to be a very important part of their kind of long-term persistence, you know, or being able to survive for a long time. And I think the issue is this: we might take those 585 birds for granted, right? But through studies like this, where over time you're tracking how conditions, as you said, are changing, you want to be able to see what the population of birds is doing across time, and that's why you need these studies. Because if you're gonna act in some way to say we really need to conserve this habitat, or we need to do less of this type of impact on this area because, you know, we need those birds, you need to be able to identify that, and you can't just do that just from saying, okay, well, these birds are still here. That doesn't tell you what the numbers are doing.
You'll see the fluctuations over time.
That's right.
Now, let me just go back to one of the most basic questions. Why is this work important? Why should we care where our birds, I mean, they inhabit perhaps the least developed part of our environment, the skies. Why should we care about where they're moving, how they're moving? What significance does it play for us as a country with such rich natural resources?
So birds may not benefit you directly, but they benefit you indirectly. So they provide ecosystem services. They're the one that do seed dispersal. They're the one that does pollination. They're the one that help with pests. They're the one that does making the soil fertile and everything. So you may not benefit directly, but you're benefiting indirectly in some way. And directly for some people might be the tourism sector. So They're the one. Without that, they don't have a livelihood. So conserving these species, you might not know all of them, but in some way you're actually helping the people around you, and you're getting some way of benefit from it as well.
Yeah, seed dispersal is very, very important. I mean, if you think about why you have standing forest and you think about connected industries like timber, the timber industry, even sometimes when you think about things like agriculture and the soil fertility and things like that. So, I venture to say that we actually do benefit directly from them always.
Yeah.
What is not happening is that they are not registered into our account system of how we quantify it.
Yeah.
Because, how until so many birds disappear and then you don't have that seed dispersal function anymore, then we're like, oh gosh, our losses in timber, our losses in crops, our losses in all of these things, or diseases from insects, say that they've been eating, because we have certain birds that only eat insects, they're insectivores. We have some that are just what we call frugivores, they just eat fruit. And so, when you lose something, then you're like, you start seeing the losses elsewhere, and that's kind of, we tend to do the accounting backwards.
Yeah.
But to actually put a value to that before is almost, that's what I'm saying. It's like we almost take these critters for granted, and what they provide. Yeah.
So one of the things you said earlier is that the banding project really takes place later on in the year, November. It starts in November.
We're about to start. Yes.
And you are open to having non-professionals participate. How does one do so, and how do you ensure that they're doing it properly? I'd imagine taking a bird out of a net is a very delicate process.
Yeah, we would never let an observer
okay.
take a bird out of a net.
I'm
No,
just making sure.
because in fact the most important thing with banding, Abidas will tell you, is what we call the bander's code of ethics. And that code of ethics it's always bird first. Okay, so bird first.
Bird before
yes,
science.
bird before anything else. So if we try to prevent any type of accident happening, for example, by visiting your nets frequently enough, making sure the birds do not get tangled and it's an easy extraction and easy taking them out of the net, safely. We have all those precautions, but were something to happen, for example, let's say that it did get tangled in your net and you're taking too much time and you see you cannot safely extract it. Well, the nets are very expensive, but we would cut them. We would do whatever we needed to do to save them. And that doesn't, as I said, that's a very unlikely scenario because we control through time.
And they're specially designed
what
too.
is happening.
Yeah.
And then the guys receive a lot of training. So that's why I was saying, like, these tour guides that have been working with us from Black Rock, they've now gone through different levels of training. Abidas in her time, In fact, Abidas is one of only 2 young Belizeans that I know that have certification to do this in the country. So it isn't something that a lot of people are equipped to do.
What's your favorite part of the process?
Everything.
Let's do one part. Do you like extracting them from the net?
Yes.
Do you get battle scars? You have scrapes all over you?
No.
Okay.
It's always exciting to go out when you're going on your net run, being like, okay, what's going to be in this net here? What can I get?
It's like a fisherman.
Yes, it's like a fisherman, yes. And then you go and you find this really nice bird, and then you come back and then you want to know, okay, how is it a ban from us? Is it banded already? No, we're going to put a ban on it. Okay, we're going to see if it's going to come back again. So it's always interesting to always look at these different areas that we collect data on, and it's always really interesting.
Yeah.
Are you particular to any one species of bird? I mean, you've come into contact with
I know, I've
quite a
come.
number.
Oh my goodness.
I can't really say for one specific species. I really like all of them, basically.
Is there one that you're looking forward to catching in your band, catching in the net that you want to see up close and personal?
I've caught a lot of birds, so I basically probably have caught a lot of
A lot of the ones with you.
What are some of the coveted species in this area that people really come here just to see?
So we have a lot of the Yucatan endemics here, and that means we can only find them in part of Mexico, Guatemala, and Belize. So a lot of them are like the Yucatan jays, the yellow-headed parrots, the the black catbirds and stuff like that.
Okay, and they're
so-
very colorful.
Yes,
Yeah.
and then like we have like some of the big raptors that you can actually see here, like the solitary eagle, the orange-breasted falcon. You can find them elsewhere, but like the population, you could see that it's decreasing and stuff. But we still have like a really nice population, not a huge amount or anything, but you know.
Do you catch big birds in your net too?
No, so
That's
I was
what I'm
gonna
trying to wonder, yeah.
clarify. So
Yeah.
so the nets, as Abidas said, are designed specifically for. So we are doing mostly songbirds.
Okay.
So the medium to, I say small to medium sized birds. You know,
Yeah.
those are what we catch. Occasionally,
We
you
would.
will get something big, but that's occasionally, and it's a matter of luck. Like a long time ago, I remember Las Cuevas, we caught a bird forest falcon, and it was like, whoa, we weren't expecting that, but it was, you know, it must have been right there in the understory,
Yeah.
you know, moving through. It was an easy extraction because the mesh is designed. If you're a big bird and the mesh is small, then you will bounce out of it and you can just fly away. You
Okay.
won't get tangled in it. If it's a tiny bird and the mesh size is too big, it will just pass right through the holes. And so, you know, so that's kind of the mesh size is important. But, you know, you do, but it's very rare that we
Yeah.
would get something big.
Yeah, and then like sometimes, like what Dr. K said about the safety of the bird. For example, we always have predators around. So we have like foxes, we have like even the raptors, like gray hawk, roadside hawk. So we've had one
Free
incident. Yes, one incident in Freshwater Creek where we know that this roadside hawk was going around. So what we did is we try to check the nets more often, especially in that area that we know that he's probably targeting those birds. And we eventually caught him because he was going to try to go down for the
Yeah.
bird that was in the net, but he got caught as well. So so we got two birds there.
So
it's
how does
important.
how do people contact you if it's a school, and who can come and observe this process?
Yes. So when we're in the process of like the actual data gathering, we cannot have a lot of people because, you know, we're trying to because we collect data on age, sex, body condition, and all of these things when we have the bird in hand, you know. So that is so we cannot have like a lot of people, but we could set up a special session for, you know, for a group of people that would be engaged, and then what we would do is just set up less nets, and so we have fewer birds, and then, you know, we can be more calm about it.
Yeah.
And yeah, everybody has to be
And have time to
quiet and
explain.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, all of that. And so you can contact us at ERI. We're on Facebook. You can look at Environmental Research Institute on Facebook, send us a message. We also have our website, which is uberibz.org, and there's contact information there, or you can write Abidas at her email, and it's just A for Abidas. Her last name is Ash, so it's aash@ub.edu.bz. We are easy to find, so just call UB, ask for the Environmental Research Institute, and ask to speak to somebody in the bird program, and
That's
then
cool.
they'll direct you to Abidas.
And the centers that you do open, the research areas that you do allow people to go, because you mentioned quite a few.
Well, the current banding stations, they're all in partnership, and actually that's something that I really wanted to highlight, because this project is very neat. Often when you hear about projects, you hear about big funding and people have a big grant to do this. We wanted to do this program with partners such that it is sustainable over time. And it's we are just amazed at what the partnership has been able to do, because we pretty much we always need extra support, so you know, we welcome donations and all of that to the program, but in general the partners put the bulk of the resources needed. So when we go to Black Rock, they welcome us there. They have their team that works there with us. When we go to Coxcomb, we have our partners at Belize Audubon, and they have their rangers that work and assist and work with Abidas. And we have a station at Freshwater Creek Forest Reserve. That's with our partners at the Corozal Sustainability Future Initiative. And we also have a couple of rangers there that work with Abidas. And then the last one, the new station that's going up this year, is at Runaway Creek Nature Preserve on the Coastal Road. and that
Runaway
is managed by Foundation for Wildlife Conservation. And they actually, a long time ago, they used to be called, they used to be called Birds Without Borders, and a long time ago, they used to have banding there through a different program. And so for us, it's exciting because we're gonna see if some of those birds come back to us. And so it's been really rich because it's literally banding for birds.
Well, I think every school should take the opportunity to try to get out to one of these centers and see firsthand the work that you're doing, because it seems pretty cool. And I just have one nagging question, has absolutely nothing to do with the science of it. How do you know the sex and age of a bird?
So there's different ways. So you can tell based on the plumage. So basically, males and females will look differently for some species, not all.
Okay.
Usually, males in this world here is pretty looking. Yes.
Yeah.
And then you can tell by the length of the bird. So some birds are bigger than so males and females are different in sizes for some species as well. But most of the time, it's when they're breeding. You can tell. So females, they will create a bare patch on their belly because they need to warm those eggs, so to insulate the heat on the eggs. So usually females would do that. There's a lot of exceptions in them as well.
Of course.
And the males, they're the ones that have the cloaca, so they're the ones that will be bigger and stuff like that. So usually you would see those conditions just in the breeding time.
And the age?
So the age, it's a really tedious cycle. It's very hard. A lot of the times that's the one that give a lot of us problems. But the age is, so what happened is when you're a young fledgling, you're putting all of these feathers out at the same time because you want to get out of that nest, because you don't want to get killed, you want to come out. So those conditions of the feather are very weak. They're not healthy enough for them to actually stay for a longer time. So birds molt, so birds will change their feathers over a year time. So when they finish that first set of feathers when they were coming out of the nest, they start putting out that next set of feathers that's a little stronger, that will help them to reach that year time. Yeah. So that's when you can see the difference in the feather quality in the terms of the color and stuff like that. So that's how that can help you in telling you, okay, it's a young bird, it's an immature bird, or it's an adult bird.
Wow, interesting. I told you it had nothing to do with it, just my own curiosity.
No,
these are the type of questions you can be able to answer, and people can see it firsthand if they do go out and see the banding in progress. Thank you for coming in and sharing this with us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you too.
We're going to go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, we'll have our wrap-up. So stay tuned.